Welcome to Inside the Program on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. I'm Joe Cook. That's Eric Naleen. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of the show. We encourage everybody to come be a part of InsideTexas.com. Join for just $1. You can use that first link in our description. You can use that QR code at the top left of the screen. Even though the team is taking finals and has spring practice behind them, still a lot of info coming, not just about the team, but about recruiting, baseball heating up as well with conference play winding down, big series if they can get in tonight. So come join us at Inside Texas. We'll have everything you need for your Longhorn fandom. And this is a interesting time of year. You're trying to figure out maybe some of the stuff that slipped through the cracks, I guess, when it comes to spring football, and maybe some things to check up on, and found a good amount of interesting intel about some scheme stuff, some underrated stuff that you posted earlier today. We know very publicly that Steve Sarkisian and Sean McVay have a good relationship. I know there's a picture in our database of Sark at a McVay, I think a Rams training camp, and they come from, like you mentioned before we started, that McShanahan tree. And one of the things you put on Inside Texas was that it seems like there may be some more Sean McVay influence making its way into the Longhorn football program.
Yeah, it's kind of a slow time of the year, but we're still investigating to see what we missed during the spring. We're still putting together a composite of this team, what it's going to look like in 2026. And yes, that investigation yielded some interesting results. We were trying to figure out why we didn't hear more about 13 personnel. It's all the rage in the NFL, 13 personnel. It's very effective inside the 5-yard line. It's really helped a lot of the best red zone teams in the NFL seem to be really good at it. So we were investigating that throughout the spring and didn't hear much about it. Finally got a call this week that, gave us a little bit of color on it. And even though they brought in Michael Masunis, and we've heard the jump of Spencer Shannon, and of course they've got Nick Townsend and Emery Winston, who are kind of their own different types of tight ends. We didn't hear much about 13 personnel, but the big reason for that is they love their big receivers, especially once they got back healthy. Ryan Wingo missed part of spring, and then Mosley missed most of spring. Cam Coleman was available throughout, but we didn't really hear about much of the replacing tight ends with the wide receivers. That's actually a big part of what they're doing. And there are kind of scheme advantages to doing it. They can make the defense damned if they do, damned if they don't. If the defense stays big, it's going to be really tough to cover those receivers out in the route tree. And if they stay small and nickel, they risk the chance of getting run over. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But there's a good chance that this is it's kind of going to be maybe a minor note to the casual viewer, but it could be a very massive scheme wrinkle in from taking the team from being good to great potentially.
I'm trying to think of how it may have looked for the Rams, and it's just kind of hard to envision because we love Arch Manning a ton, but there's Matthew Stafford, and it's we think highly of Cam Coleman, but this is Puka Nacua. But I think the idea that you can, no matter where they throw all the different personnel, is you still have a one-on-one matchup available for one of your top receivers. And then you still have the blocking available maybe for another tight end, running back, something like that. It still keeps the passing options open, even though it doesn't sound like it might with 3 tight ends on the field.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're quasi tight ends. We've called it 12 and a half personnel in the past. But yeah, you're going to have big advantages. They have advantages in the red zone with the receivers anyway because they're big and can go up and get it, especially Cam Coleman. But I think it's an underrated aspect of what Chris Jackson has looked for. It doesn't always show up in recruiting rankings. They're not evaluating wide receiver blocking all that often. But it's something that Chris Jackson looks for. I think there's a bit of a selection bias towards it for getting rid of the guys that aren't team players, sort of the me first wide receivers. That position tends to be littered with selfish players. This is one way to get rid of that. But they've got a group that I think is the best blocking group that they've assembled. We know that a big reason they brought in Emmett Mosley in the first place from Stanford, even despite the fact that he was productive as a freshman, a big reason was his blocking. And one source put it to me that, Cam Coleman is probably the most underrated aspect of his game. And not only is he good at it, he's elite at it. And we've seen Ryan Wingo spring some pretty big blocks too. He's physical, athletic, and a selfless player in the beginning. He showed his selflessness by recruiting Cam Coleman to Texas in the first place. So Sark has a pretty big advantage here by the size and strength of these receivers, and also just their want to. So it might look like they're in 11 personnel, and technically they will be, but they're going to run 13 personnel games out of that.
One of the things that you also went into on your notes that you posted this morning is just you speak to the ability for guys like Coleman and Wingo and Mosley to block, but even some of the true freshman receivers that have been brought in of varying physical statures, they show a lot of effort when it comes to putting their hands on people.
Well, it's an effort game. You have to want to do it in the first place. If you don't want to do it, it doesn't matter how big and strong you are. That's how you get the guys that look like Tarzan and play like Jane, which Cam Coleman looks like Tarzan, plays like Tarzan. That's what you need. But you can be a wiry, strong guy and still hold your own. Xavier Worthy, now he would get thrown around sometimes just because he only weighed 160 pounds. And the same is going to happen to Jermaine Bishop. But there were also times we saw Xavier Worthy just light into some people and really give his best effort. He was tough. Hard-nosed player, and Jermaine Bishop has those traits as well. But the really good blocker out of that group, and Chris Stewart will block as well, is Cohen Brown. Cohen Brown comes in with that defensive mindset and that defensive build, really. He's a strong guy, but he wants to. Now, who's the best blocker of the last decade at the position, or maybe one of the best blockers in the history of the program at that position is Jordan Whittington. Jordan Whittington would have been an elite safety. Cohen Brown would have been an elite safety too. He's got that sort of mentality and that build and that strength. These guys are almost like H-backs, 200-pound H-backs. So Cohen Brown, I'm not sure that they're going to have Coleman and Wingo on the field a whole lot this year. They're guys are too good to take off. But I think there's a bright future for Cohen Brown, and we might even see him out in space doing some Jay Witt things this season.
Going to be a lot of fun to track. And then even so, I found an old clip. I think this tells you how long ago it was. Spencer Sanders throwing to, I think, like Brennan Presley in that 2019 game. Like, you can fake screen, and Lincoln Riley did this all the time, and Sark's done it some as well. Fake screen, start bringing those defenders in, and then boom, there they go right by. So there's a lot of different things that just being proficient at blocking really opens the door for this offense. Before we keep on going, got to show some love to our sponsor. That is Andre the Lawyer.
Texans know when you're injured, there's one name that gets results. Andre the Lawyer. Trust the team that has secured millions for their clients and helped thousands of Texans win their injury cases. Car wrecks, slip and falls, 18-wheeler accidents, on-the-job injuries, wrongful deaths. Don't let the insurance companies tell you what your claim is worth. Andre the Lawyer will fight for you. His principal office is in Dallas, but they serve Texans throughout the state. So don't wait. Call 214-444-8808. That's 214-444-8808. Contact info is in the description.
Somebody on our live on Thursday said, like, is that Ray Romano advertising on your show? And man, I hope Andre gets to see that and hear that.
Everybody loves Dre.
Yeah, exactly. Moving to the other side of the ball, again, another thing where, trying to unearth some more details. We know Texas was good on turnover margin last year. Maybe didn't have like the total volume that they wanted of turnovers forced. That's going to be something emphasized to the team plenty as they try to change possession faster and more often this year.
Yeah, if you want to win the big games, you got to win on the margins. We talked about the little things of blocking could be a huge thing for the offense. Obviously, forcing turnovers, that's an obvious one. We all know that. It's any talking head, his keys to the game will be win the turnover margin. We understand that, but it's a little deeper with Texas because, the way Muschamp looks at it, he looks at interceptions as being sort of a skill thing. Like, you're going to get them based on technique, awareness, experience. Yeah, you're going to get help from the overall defense at times. Pressure, maybe the ball gets tossed in the air as the quarterback's being hit. But strips, forcing fumbles, that's hustle, violence, effort, awareness of where to attack the ball, but also team effort, team hustle, team pursuit. So he kind of looks at them two different ways. And he doesn't focus on interceptions nearly as much. Obviously, Orphe and Gideon are working with his DBs on getting the ball, high pointing and all that. But he's looking at the mindset it takes to go out, strip the ball, be violent, and then the defense to hurry, corral the ball, and get after it. How many times have we seen a fumble be recovered by the offense just because only one defender was there? The ball slips through. You need multiple guys because you never know how the ball is going to bounce. So that's really the emphasis for them. And, they feel like they've got some guys that know how to do it. There was a famous play last year that went the wrong way for Texas as Jelani McDonald was trying to punch it out against Florida. Wasn't able to do it, broke a tackle. So Muschamp still, of course, teaches the fundamentals of wrapping up first. But once you have that, man, you've got to get the ball out. And that it's a huge emphasis of spring. And a couple of guys are pretty good at it.
I like the term turnover luck because, like you mentioned, it does matter how that ball bounces. It's oddly shaped. It's never going to go maybe where you expect it to go. But that's I think the term really dictates what you have to do to create turnovers is, like you said, be in position, do stuff like that. Don't just bank on turnovers, bank on doing all the right things to get the ball out and stuff like that. And there are a couple players, one, or actually both new to the program, who you wrote earned some high praise for their ability to create those turnovers.
Yeah, Rasheem Miles is the best in the program, no doubt about it. He had 2 forced fumbles last year. I look for that number to go up this season. Very active. Of course, you want your linebacker as being the best guy at it. Famously, Derek Johnson, I think, set the NCAA record in 2004 with his ability to force fumbles. Miles has a lot of range. He's going to be around the ball a lot. You want the guy that's around the ball a lot to have that skill set. But one that was surprising is Samari Matthews. He's just got a knack for punching the ball out. Maybe he was getting the freshman wide receivers. I'm not sure, but he seems to have a good touch when it comes to forcing fumbles. But I look for Rasheem Miles to lead the team in that category, and then hopefully his partners are around there to pick it up.
As far as the interception side of things, who are some of the defensive backs that have shown they can get their hands on the football?
Well, the best ball skills were it was said Jelani McDonald. And we saw that play last year in non-conference where he just climbed the ladder, went up and got it like a receiver. But we had heard about him like as the guy that could replace Makuba. Now Makuba was special at it. Don't get me wrong, but Jelani has those sorts of ball skills. And then Bo Masco at cornerback, good ball skills. I think a lot of that is tied to some of his experience too. A lot of these guys that get the ball, it's like the game slows down for them, so they know that they have time to look for the ball. A number of young corners are still just worried about covering their guy, and they don't get their head around. Masco's really good about getting his head around.
As far as putting guys on the ground instead of just getting the football on the ground, we know that they do the OTA thing, but they still get tackles, get full tackle to the ground, full contact, things like that. Who have been some of the guys who have been most physical at each of the different positions?
Yeah, physical tackler, and of course, obviously, Colin Simmons is very physical. Lance Jackson is very physical. We were talking about more guys in space. Kobe Black got mentioned, especially when you think about cornerback. He's very physical for cornerback. He's physical enough for safety, so that tells you that he's a very physical cornerback. He's one that was mentioned. Anthony Smith was mentioned as far as linebackers, even though we didn't see him at spring. He's got a long history at Texas of being physical. Safety Jordan Johnson Rebel was mentioned. He's as good as any safety they have when it comes to run fits. Obviously, physicality is a big part of his game. And then Jonathan Cunningham, who I think is going to have a pretty big role on special teams this year, was mentioned. Remember, he came from North Crowley, hard-nosed program, playing linebacker. He still has some of that linebacker in him while playing safety.
Guys who have the smarts and the instincts to put them in the right spot. Who were some of the standouts that you heard from or heard about?
That was Bo Masco, right? I think he was mentioned early in that. I got to remember the rest.
Crier was the
Juice
main
Crier. Yeah. Juice Crier. Again, it's a chicken and egg. Were they smart before they started, or did the experience really make them smart? I think it's a little bit of A, a little bit of B. But both those guys have a lot of experience. In Juice Crier, they really brought him in for that role. Juice is not only he's not only intelligent, he communicates very well, which of course you have to do. That's right. Kobe Black was mentioned in that section again. That everything we're hearing about Kobe's like, okay, he's a good corner, but geez, man, he could be an elite safety if he's communicating at corner. He's smart at corner. Obviously, that's going to translate to safety. You have to have that. Bo Masco again mentioned. It's just I think it's tied to experience. Cade Phillips was mentioned as well. I think Cade watches a ton of film. Goes a long way. More of a quiet kid. But you could tell that he watches a lot of film because he seems to have an understanding of what the wide receivers are trying to do to him.
Ty Anthony Smith earlier this spring talked about how he'll probably end up being the green dot guy. You can't have two on the field at the same time, but it sounds like if Ty Anthony Smith needs a break, things won't skip a beat with Juice Crier out there calling stuff for the rest of the defense.
I mean, I like the fact that those guys are viewed as interchangeable because I mean they're quite different players. What's the offense doing? What are they succeeding at? If they're making plays on the perimeter, you want Ty Anthony in there. If they're running the ball down your throat or trying to, you want Juice in there. So those guys are very complementary in their skill sets. Obviously, Ty Anthony is going to be much better in pass coverage. It's just going to give Muschamp a lot of optionality in what he wants to do. Most of the time, the mic isn't going to be lined up on a receiver or even a tight end. They're going to play that guy in space. But we did see that one play in the open practice where Cryer was running the seam, and he did it very well. I would probably just feel a little bit more comfortable with Ty Anthony there long term. But those guys seem interchangeable, and then you've got Biles and Atkinson that can play over there at will. Linebacker rooms, it's in solid shape, I would say, because Cryer is better than we anticipated.
Going to be an interesting room to track. It's all going to be interesting to track, and we'll be having it all on Inside Texas. Come join for just $1 using that first link in our description, or you can use that QR code there at the top left of the screen. All the football, recruiting, baseball, a little bit of basketball stuff that you can handle. We got it over at InsideTexas.com. Eric, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Inside the Program on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com.